Amy Carter wiped the sweat from her forehead as she stood in the middle of the Nevada desert. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and red. She had been digging here for 3 days, and her back was killing her. But she could not stop. Now? Not when she was so close to finding out the truth. Her grandmother Elena had died 5 years ago, leaving behind boxes of old notebooks filled with drawings. Amy had always thought they were just her grandmother's way of keeping busy in her old age. The sketches showed strange ships flying through space, with humans inside wearing special suits. Elena would tell stories about these ships when Amy was little, about brave people who traveled to the stars to protect Earth. Amy had loved those stories, but she always thought they were just made up. Her grandmother had a wild imagination. Everyone said so. Elena would draw the same ship over and over again, always with perfect details. She knew exactly how many windows it had, where the engines were placed, and what the control panels looked like inside. 3 weeks ago, Amy had been going through her grandmother's things one more time. She was an archaeologist, so she noticed things that other people might miss. In one of the notebooks, she found something strange. Between the drawings of spaceships, there were numbers written in small letters. They looked like coordinates. Amy had plugged the numbers into her GPS, and they pointed to a spot in the Nevada desert. She had no idea why her grandmother would have coordinates to the middle of nowhere, but she had to find out. She took time off work and drove to the location. When she arrived, there was nothing to see. Just sand and rocks and a few dead bushes. But Amy had learned to trust her instincts. She started digging where the coordinates pointed, using her archaeological tools. On the first day, she found nothing. On the second day, her shovel hit something hard. It was not a rock. It was metal. Her heart started beating fast as she carefully brushed away the sand. The metal was smooth and had a strange blue color that seemed to shine even in the desert sun. By the third day, Amy had uncovered enough to see that it was definitely some kind of vehicle. It was buried deep, as if it had been there for a long time. The shape was exactly like the ships in her grandmother's drawings. Every curve, every angle matched perfectly. Amy sat back on her heels, staring at what she had found. This was impossible. Her grandmother's drawings were supposed to be fantasy, not blueprints for real machines. But there it was, buried in the sand exactly where Elena's coordinates had said it would be. She kept digging, working faster now. The excitement made her forget how tired she was. As more of the ship became visible, Amy could see that it was bigger than she had first thought. It was about the size of a small airplane, with a sleek design that looked nothing like any aircraft she had ever seen. The metal was not damaged, even though it had been buried for who knows how long. There were no scratches or dents. It looked like it had been built yesterday. Amy ran her hands along the surface, feeling for any way to get inside. Near what looked like the front of the ship, she found a small panel. When she pressed on it, it slid open to reveal a handprint scanner. Amy stared at it. This was definitely not normal technology. She had never seen anything like it. Without really thinking about it, Amy placed her hand on the scanner. There was a soft beep, and suddenly the entire ship hummed to life. Lights came on under the sand, and a section of the hull opened up like a door. Amy jumped back, her heart pounding. The ship was still working. After all these years buried in the desert, it was still working. She grabbed her flashlight and slowly approached the opening. Inside, the ship was clean and bright. The lights had come on automatically when the door opened. Amy climbed in carefully, looking around in amazement. The interior was just like her grandmother's drawings, down to the smallest detail. There were 2 seats in the front, facing a control panel covered with buttons and screens. Behind them was a small area with what looked like storage compartments. Amy sat down in the pilot's seat, feeling like she was in a dream. Everything was exactly where her grandmother had drawn it. The steering controls, the screens, even the cup holder were all in the right places. How had Elena known all this? She started opening the storage compartments, looking for clues. In one of them, she found a thick book. The cover was made of the same strange metal as the ship's hull. When she opened it, she recognized her grandmother's handwriting immediately. The book was full of notes and reports, written in Elena's careful script. The first page was dated 1952, when Elena would have been only 20 years old. Amy read. The first entry with growing amazement. Day 1 of advanced pilot training. Commander Stevens says I have natural talent for spaceflight. The new ship handles better than the old models. We should be ready for the next patrol mission within the week. Amy flipped through more pages. Every entry was written like Elena had actually been flying these ships, fighting in space battles, protecting Earth from alien invaders. The level of detail was incredible. Elena wrote about different types of enemy ships, about battle tactics, about other pilots who had been lost in combat. But the most shocking thing was on the last page. Amy found her grandmother's full name carved into the metal hull of the ship, along with a date from 1952. The carving was deep and old. Made by someone who had spent a lot of time in this cockpit. Amy sat back in the pilot's seat, trying to make sense of what she had found. Either her grandmother had been completely crazy, creating an elaborate fantasy world complete with a buried spaceship, or the bedtime stories had been real all along. She kept reading the logbook. Elena wrote about a secret organization that protected Earth from alien threats. She described battles fought in the outer solar system, where small teams of human pilots took on much larger enemy forces. She wrote about the importance of keeping the program secret, because if the aliens knew how capable humans really were, they would send bigger fleets to destroy Earth. The final entry in the logbook was dated just 3 days before Elena supposedly died in a car accident. It was shorter than the others, and Elena's handwriting looked rushed. Intelligence reports suggest major enemy offensive being planned, all active pilots being recalled to base. This may be our last chance to establish contact with the Alliance. If something happens to me, the coordinates are hidden in the drawings. Amy must be told when she is ready. The future of humanity depends on maintaining the secret. Amy closed the logbook and looked around the ship again. Everything was real. The smooth metal walls, the working lights, the advanced technology that was decades ahead of anything she had seen before. Her grandmother had not been telling stories. She had been sharing memories. Amy climbed out of the ship and stood in the desert, looking up at the stars that were just becoming visible in the darkening sky. Somewhere up there, her grandmother had fought battles to protect Earth. Elena Carter had been a real space pilot, flying missions that no one would ever know about. The woman who had made her cookies and told her bedtime stories had been a secret. Hero, defending humanity from threats that most people could not even imagine. And now, Amy was the only one who knew the truth. She looked back at the ship, still glowing softly in the desert darkness. This was just the beginning. Elena had left her the coordinates for a reason. There were more secrets to discover, more of the truth to uncover. Amy Carter was about to learn that some family legends were more real than anyone could have imagined. Amy spent the night in her tent next to the ship, unable to sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her grandmother's face telling those stories that had seemed so impossible. Now she knew Elena had been sharing real memories, not fairy tales. When the sun came up, Amy climbed back into the ship. She needed to understand more about what her grandmother had been doing. The logbook had mentioned activation sequences and hidden controls. Maybe there were more secrets waiting to be discovered. Amy studied her grandmother's drawings again. Comparing them to the actual ship, Elena had drawn every button and switch perfectly. In one drawing, there was a sequence of buttons highlighted with small dots. Amy found the same buttons on the control panel in front of her. She pressed the buttons in the order shown in the drawing. The ship hummed louder, and suddenly the main screen came to life. Words appeared in bright blue letters, written in perfect English. "Welcome back, Pilot Carter. Please state your authorization code." Amy stared at the screen. The computer thought she was her grandmother. She flipped through the logbook, looking for anything that might be an authorization code. On one page, she found a series of numbers written in the margin next to Elena's name. Amy typed the numbers into the control panel. The screen flashed green and a new message appeared. Authorization confirmed. Welcome to the Earth Defense Corps navigation system. Please note that you are not the registered pilot for this vessel. Emergency protocols are now active. The ship's interior lit up with new displays and controls that Amy had not seen before. A holographic figure appeared in the seat next to her. It looked like a woman in a military uniform, but Amy could see right through her. "Greetings," the hologram said. "I am Lieutenant Commander Sarah Blake, Artificial Intelligence Officer for the Earth Defense Corps. I was your grandmother's navigation partner for 12 years. You must be Amy." Amy's mouth fell open. She was talking to a computer that looked and sounded like a real person. "You knew my grandmother?" "Elena Carter was one of our finest pilots," Sarah said. "She spoke of you often. She hoped you would never need to see this ship or learn about our mission. But circumstances have changed." The hologram waved her hand, and the ship's main screen filled with star maps and tactical displays. Amy recognized some of the star patterns from her grandmother's drawings. "The Earth Defense Corps has been protecting humanity for over 100 years, Sarah explained. "We are a secret organization that operates advanced spacecraft to defend Earth from hostile alien species. Your grandmother was recruited in 1951 when she was 19 years old." Amy shook her head. "This is impossible. If there are aliens out there, why doesn't anyone know about it?" "Because," Sarah said, "knowledge of our existence would cause panic and also make Earth a bigger target. The aliens we fight believe that humans are primitive and weak. That gives us a huge advantage in combat." The screen showed recordings of space battles. Amy watched small human ships fighting against much larger alien vessels. The human pilots moved with incredible skill, dodging enemy fire and striking at weak points with perfect accuracy. "Humans have something that most alien species do not," Sarah continued. "You adapt quickly to new situations. You think creatively under pressure. You take risks that other species would consider insane. These qualities make you excellent space fighters." Amy watched her grandmother's ship on the screen, diving between enemy fighters and destroying them with precise shots. Elena had been young in the recording, maybe in her 20s, but she flew with the confidence of someone who had been born to pilot spacecraft. "The main threat to Earth comes from an alliance of alien species called the Hegemony," Sarah said. "They believe that humans are too dangerous to be allowed to develop advanced technology. They have been trying to destroy Earth for decades." The display showed a map of the solar system with red dots marking enemy positions. There were far more red dots than Amy had expected. "The Hegemony has been sending scout ships and small attack forces to test our defenses," Sarah explained. "Each time our pilots have driven them back, but they keep coming with bigger fleets and better weapons." Amy looked at the tactical display. "How many pilots do you have?" "At peak strength, we had over 300 active pilots operating from bases throughout the solar system. Today, we have fewer than 50. Many were lost in recent battles. Others have retired or been reassigned to training duties." The reality of the situation hit Amy like a punch to the stomach. Her grandmother had been part of a secret war that had been going on for decades. Elena had risked her life again and again to protect a planet that would never know her name. "Why? Are you telling me this?" Amy asked. Sarah's expression became serious. "Because the Hegemony is planning their final assault on Earth. Our intelligence networks have detected massive fleet movements in the outer system. They are bringing everything they have for one decisive battle." The screen showed long-range sensor data. Hundreds of enemy ships were gathering beyond the orbit of Pluto. Amy had never seen anything so terrifying. "We need every pilot we can get," Sarah said. "Your grandmother believed that you inherited her natural abilities. The genetic traits that make someone an excellent space pilot are passed down through families." Amy laughed nervously. "I'm an archaeologist. I dig up old things. I don't fly spaceships." "Your grandmother was a farm girl from Kansas when she was recruited," Sarah replied. "Natural ability matters more than training. Besides, this ship is designed to work with your genetic profile. Elena made sure of that." The ship's systems responded to Amy's touch even though she had never used them before. When she put her hands on the control stick, the displays automatically adjusted to her height and reach. The ship seemed to know what she needed before she did. "There are others like you," Sarah continued, "children and grandchildren of former pilots scattered around the world. Most of them don't know about their family history. We have been contacting them as quietly as possible." Amy thought about her normal life back home. Her job at the university, her small apartment, her routine of digging up ancient pottery and writing research papers. It all seemed so far away. "Now, what happened to my grandmother?" Amy asked. "Her death was reported as a car accident." Sarah's image flickered slightly. "Elena Carter died in combat 3 years ago, defending a research station near Jupiter. The car accident was a cover story to protect her family from hegemony assassins. She was 68 years old and still one of our best pilots." Amy felt tears in her eyes. Her grandmother had died a hero, fighting to protect Earth, and Amy had never known. She had thought Elena died in a simple traffic accident. She left "You this ship and her mission logs because she knew this day would come," Sarah said. "The final battle is approaching, and humanity needs all the help it can get. The question is, will you answer the call?" Amy looked at the control panel, then at the star map showing enemy positions. She thought about her grandmother flying these same routes, facing impossible odds to protect the people she loved. "I need time to think," Amy said. "I understand," Sarah replied. "But time is the one thing we don't have much of. The hegemony fleet will reach Earth's outer defenses within 6 months. If you're going to join us, your training needs to begin immediately." The hologram faded, leaving Amy alone in the cockpit. Outside, the desert was quiet and peaceful. It was hard to believe that somewhere in the darkness above, an alien fleet was preparing to destroy everything she had ever known. Amy picked up her grandmother's logbook and read the final entry again. Elena had written about the importance of maintaining the secret about protecting humanity's future. She had given up everything to keep Earth safe. Now it was Amy's turn to decide. She could walk away, return to her normal life, and hope that other pilots would be enough to win the war. Or she could follow in her grandmother's footsteps and become part of humanity's secret defense. Amy looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the evening sky. Somewhere out there, her grandmother had fought and died to protect those she loved. The least Amy could do was find out if she had inherited Elena's courage along with her genetic abilities. She pressed the button to reactivate the ship's communication system. It was time to learn more about what she was getting into. Amy activated the communication system and waited. The ship's screens lit up with new information, showing her things she had never imagined. Sarah's hologram appeared again, looking pleased that Amy had decided to learn more. "I'm glad you're ready to hear the full story," Sarah said. "Your grandmother left detailed instructions about what to tell you if this day ever came. There are things about your family that you need to know." The main screen showed a genetic analysis that made Amy's head spin. Charts and graphs filled the display, showing DNA patterns and something called enhancement markers that she did not understand. "Elena Carter was not chosen randomly for the pilot program," Sarah explained. "She carried a rare genetic combination that appears in less than 1% of the human population. This combination gives certain people faster reflexes, better spatial awareness, and the ability to think clearly under extreme stress." Amy stared at the genetic data. "You're saying my grandmother was genetically special?" "All of our best pilots share similar genetic profiles," Sarah replied. "It's not that they're smarter or stronger than other people. They just process information differently when they're in combat situations. Their brains work faster when everything is falling apart around them." The screen showed brain scans comparing normal humans to pilots like Elena. The differences were small but important. The pilot brains showed more activity in areas that controlled quick decision-making and spatial reasoning. "The same genetic markers that made Elena an excellent pilot have been passed down to you," Sarah continued. "That's why the ship responded to your touch so easily. That's why the controls feel natural even though you've never used them before." Amy looked at her hands on the control stick. It was true that everything felt familiar, like she had been flying this ship for years instead of discovering it yesterday. But there's more you need to understand, Sarah said. Elena didn't just fight random battles in space. She was part of a much larger plan to protect humanity from complete destruction. The screen changed to show a timeline going back over a century. Amy saw dates and names, battles fought and won, technology developed and improved. The Earth Defense Corps had been growing stronger for generations. The first contact with hostile aliens happened in 1889, Sarah explained. A scout ship crashed in the Arizona desert. The military recovered the wreckage and began reverse engineering the technology. They realized that Earth was being watched by species that might not be friendly. Amy watched historical footage of the first primitive human spacecraft, built using alien technology. They looked nothing like the sleek ships she had seen in her grandmother's drawings. For the first 50 years, we could barely defend ourselves, Sarah continued. Our ships were slow and clumsy compared to alien technology. We lost many good pilots learning how to fight in space. But gradually we got better. The timeline showed how human technology had improved over the decades. Each generation of ships was faster and more powerful than the last. More importantly, human pilots were learning tactics that worked against alien enemies. The breakthrough came in the 1940s, Sarah said. We realized that aliens fight in very predictable patterns. They follow strict rules and procedures. But humans don't. Elena's generation was the first to really understand how to use that advantage. Amy saw battle recordings from the 1950s. Human pilots were doing things that seemed impossible, making sharp turns that should have destroyed their ships, attacking from angles that defied common sense. The alien enemies clearly didn't know how to respond to such unpredictable tactics. Elena was one of the pioneers of what we call chaos combat, Sarah explained. Instead of following standard battle procedures, she would do whatever the enemy least expected. She would ram damaged ships into enemy formations, use debris as weapons, even pretend to retreat just to lure enemies into traps. The screen showed Elena's ship diving straight at a massive alien battleship, firing all weapons until the last possible second before pulling away. The alien ship, expecting a normal attack pattern, was caught completely off guard. The aliens started calling human pilots the mad ones, Sarah said with something that might have been pride. They couldn't understand why humans would take such crazy risks. But those risks won battles that should have been impossible to win. Amy watched more footage of her grandmother in combat. Elena was fearless, diving into enemy formations that outnumbered her 10-1, but she wasn't just brave. She was smart, using the aliens' own tactics against them. Elena's greatest victory came in 1967, Sarah continued. She was leading a patrol of 6 ships when they encountered a hegemony invasion fleet of over 200 vessels. Any reasonable commander would have retreated to call for backup. The screen showed the tactical situation. 6 tiny human ships facing a massive alien fleet. It should have been a massacre. Instead, Elena ordered her pilots to attack immediately, Sarah said. She knew that the aliens would assume she was leading the advance guard of a much larger human fleet. They would hold back their main force and try to capture her ships to gather intelligence. Amy watched the battle unfold. Elena's small force struck hard at the alien fleet's command ships, causing confusion and panic. The aliens pulled back, thinking they were facing a trap. While the enemy was regrouping, Elena led her ships in a running battle through the asteroid belt, Sarah explained. She used the asteroids as cover and weapons, causing the aliens to destroy their own ships with friendly fire. By the time reinforcements arrived, Elena's 6 ships had destroyed over 30 enemy vessels. The victory had made Elena a legend among Earth Defense Corps pilots. But Amy noticed something else in the battle footage. Her grandmother had been ruthless when necessary, but she had also tried to save every human life she could. Elena never lost a pilot under her command, Sarah said. In 15 years of active duty, every pilot who flew with her came home alive. That's almost unheard of in this kind of warfare. Amy felt a surge of pride in her grandmother. Elena had been not just a hero, but a leader who cared about her people. After Elena retired from active combat, she became a trainer and strategist, Sarah continued. She developed many of the tactics that our current pilots still use. More importantly, she helped identify and recruit the next generation of pilots. The screen showed a list of names, dozens of pilots who had been trained by Elena Carter. Many had gone on to become commanders themselves, leading missions throughout the solar system. Elena spent her final years preparing for the battle we're facing now, Sarah explained. She knew that the hegemony would eventually decide to end the war with one massive assault. She helped design the ships and weapons that will be used in that final battle. Amy looked around the cockpit with new understanding. This wasn't just her grandmother's old ship. It was Elena's final gift to humanity, incorporating decades of experience and innovation. But Elena's most important contribution was making sure that the next generation would be ready, Sarah said. She identified dozens of families carrying the genetic markers for exceptional pilots. She made sure that their children and grandchildren would know the truth when the time came. The screen showed a map of the world with dots marking the locations of potential pilots. Amy was surprised to see how many there were, scattered across every continent. You're not alone, Amy, Sarah said. There are others like you, people who grew up hearing stories that seemed like fantasy but were actually family history. They're learning the truth right now, just as you are. Amy thought about other families like hers, with grandparents who had fought secret battles in space. She wondered if they were as scared and confused as she was. Elena left personal messages for you, Sarah said. She recorded them shortly before her final mission. Would you like to see them? Amy nodded, not trusting her voice. The screen changed to show her grandmother's face, older than Amy remembered, but still strong and determined. Hello, my dear Amy, Elena's recorded voice said. If you're watching this, then the time has come for you to learn the truth about our family. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you when I was alive, but I wanted you to have a normal childhood for as long as possible. Elena's image smiled, and Amy felt tears in her eyes. Her grandmother had always been her favorite person in the world. I know. This is overwhelming, Elena continued. But you come from a long line of people who do what's necessary to protect those they love. The blood of heroes runs in your veins, Amy. Trust yourself and trust the ship. It will keep you safe. The recording ended, leaving Amy alone with her thoughts. She understood now that her grandmother's death had been a sacrifice, not an accident. Elena had died defending humanity from enemies that most people would never know existed. Amy looked up at the stars through the ship's canopy. Her grandmother was out there somewhere, and Amy was the only family member left to carry on the legacy. The question was whether she had the courage to follow in Elena's footsteps. Amy sat in the ship's cockpit for a long time after her grandmother's message ended. The desert was quiet around her, but her mind was racing with everything she had learned. She was supposed to be just an archaeologist who studied old pottery. Now she was being asked to become a space pilot in the secret war. Sarah's hologram appeared again, giving Amy time to process her emotions. I know this is difficult, the AI said gently. Elena struggled with the same decision when she was recruited. No one wants to leave their normal life behind. Did she ever regret it? Amy asked. Sometimes, Sarah replied honestly. She missed having a regular family life. She missed being able to tell people about her real job. But she never regretted protecting Earth. She saved millions of lives. That will never know her name. The ship's communication system suddenly activated with an incoming signal. Sarah's expression became serious as she answered the call. This is Commander Jake Morrison from Earth Defense Corps Central Command, a man's voice said through the speakers. We're detecting an unauthorized activation of Ship 77 Alpha. Please identify yourself immediately. Amy looked at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. This is Amy Carter, she said, her voice shaking slightly. I'm Elena Carter's granddaughter. I found this ship using coordinates she left in her notebooks. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Commander Morrison's voice came. Back, warmer than before. Amy Carter. We've been hoping you would contact us. Your grandmother spoke about you often. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you, Amy replied. Sarah has been telling me about the Earth Defense Corps and the war with the hegemony. I'm having trouble believing all of this is real. I understand completely, Morrison said. When I was recruited 20 years ago, I thought someone was playing an elaborate joke on me. But the evidence is pretty hard to argue with when you're sitting in a spacecraft that shouldn't exist. Amy laughed nervously. That's exactly how I feel right now. Amy, I need to be straight with you about our situation, Morrison continued. The hegemony has been preparing for their final assault on Earth. Our long-range sensors show them gathering the largest fleet we've ever seen. They plan to overwhelm our defenses with sheer numbers. Sarah activated the ship's tactical display, showing Amy the latest intelligence reports. The number of enemy ships was staggering. Red dots filled the screen, representing more alien vessels than Amy could count. How many ships do we have? Amy asked. 47 active pilots with operational spacecraft, Morrison replied. We've been trying to recruit and train new pilots as fast as possible, but it takes time to prepare someone for space combat. Time we don't have. Amy studied the tactical display. Even with her limited understanding of military strategy, she could see that the numbers were hopeless. 47 human ships against thousands of alien vessels seemed like certain defeat. Your grandmother designed new tactics specifically for this battle, Morrison continued. She believed that if we could get enough pilots trained quickly, we might have a chance. But that means we need people like you, Amy, people with the genetic markers and the natural ability. I'm not a soldier, Amy protested. I've never even been in a real fight, much less a space battle. Neither was Elena when she started, Morrison said. But she had something that can't be taught. She had the ability to think clearly when everything was falling apart. According to Sarah's scans, you have the same genetic profile. Amy looked at her hands on the ship's controls. Everything did feel natural, like she had been born to fly this machine. But natural ability and actual combat were very different things. What would training involve? Amy asked. 6 weeks of intensive preparation, Morrison replied. Physical, conditioning, spacecraft systems, combat tactics, and live-fire exercises. It's not easy, but we've designed the program to get new pilots ready as quickly as possible. 6 weeks seemed like no time at all to prepare for a war against advanced alien technology. Amy thought about her quiet life as an archaeologist. She had never wanted to be a hero. She just wanted to dig up old things and write papers about ancient civilizations. Amy, Morrison said, I won't lie to you, this is dangerous. We've lost good pilots in training accidents and many more in combat. If you choose to join us, you might not come home. But if we lose this battle, there won't be a home to come back to. The weight of the decision pressed down on Amy like a physical force. She thought about her grandmother flying this same ship into impossible odds, fighting enemies that wanted to destroy everything she loved. How long do I have to decide? Amy asked. The enemy fleet will reach our outer defenses in 5 months, Morrison replied. If you're going to join us, you need to start training within the next few days. After that, there won't be time to prepare new pilots. Amy closed her eyes and tried to imagine herself in space combat, dodging enemy fire and trying to protect Earth. The idea terrified her. But the thought of doing nothing while her planet was destroyed was even worse. Can I see the base? Amy asked. Can I meet some of the other pilots before I decide? Of course, Morrison said. Sarah can guide your ship to our training facility. It's hidden in the mountains of Colorado. You can see what we're dealing with and make your decision based on complete information. Amy looked at Sarah, who was already plotting a course on the navigation display. How long will it take to get there? 3 hours at normal speed, Sarah replied. This ship is much faster than anything the public knows about. We'll stay low and use terrain-following flight patterns to avoid detection. Amy felt a surge of excitement despite her fear. She was about to fly a spacecraft for the first time in her life. The ship's engines hummed to life as Sarah began the startup sequence. Amy, Morrison's voice came through the speakers one more time. "I knew your grandmother well. She was the best pilot and finest person I've ever served with. She would be proud of you for even considering this. Whatever you decide, you honor her memory." The communication ended, leaving Amy alone with Sarah as the ship lifted off from the desert floor. Amy watched the ground fall away below them, amazed at how smooth and quiet the flight was. This was nothing like the airplanes she had flown. "And before, your grandmother took this same flight 50 years ago," Sarah said. "She was scared too, but she was also excited. She knew she was about to become part of something bigger than herself." As they flew toward the mountains, Amy thought about all the people on Earth who had no idea what was coming. They were going about their normal lives, working and laughing and falling in love, completely unaware that alien enemies were preparing to destroy their world. "Sarah," Amy said, "what happens if we lose this battle?" I was quiet for a moment. "The hegemony doesn't take prisoners," she replied. "They believe humans are too dangerous to be allowed to survive. If they win, they'll destroy every city, every town, every person on Earth. They want to make sure that human unpredictability never spreads to other parts of the galaxy." Amy felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about everyone she had ever known, everyone she had ever loved, everyone she had ever met in her entire life. "Then I guess I don't really have a choice, do I?" Amy said quietly. "There's always a choice," Sarah replied. "Your grandmother chose to fight because she believed that some things are worth dying for. Freedom, love, the right to exist. She chose to stand up to bullies who wanted to destroy everything good in the universe." Amy looked out at the mountains ahead, knowing that her old life was ending and a new one was about to begin. She thought about her grandmother's courage, about the legacy of heroes that had been passed down to her. "Elena always said that heroes aren't people who aren't afraid," Sarah continued. "Heroes are people who are afraid but do what's right anyway." She believed you had that kind of courage in you. As the secret base came into view, Amy made her decision. She would train to become a pilot. She would learn to fight in space. She would carry on her grandmother's legacy and help defend Earth from the coming invasion. She was terrified, but she was also determined. The hegemony was about to learn what Elena Carter had already known. Humans were much more dangerous than they looked. Amy's training at the hidden Colorado base was the hardest thing she had ever done. Commander Morrison pushed her to her limits every single day. She learned to fly in impossible situations, to think while enemy fire was exploding around her, and to trust her instincts when everything seemed hopeless. The other new recruits came from all over the world. There was Marcus, a mechanic from Detroit whose grandfather had been a bomber pilot in the 1960s. Lisa came from Sweden, where her great-aunt had been one of the first female space pilots. Kevin was a farmer from Australia, whose family had been fighting aliens for 3 generations. All of them had grown up hearing stories that seemed like fantasy. All of them had found ships or equipment hidden by their families. All of them carried the genetic markers that made humans deadly in space combat. After 6 weeks of training, Amy barely recognized herself. She was stronger, faster, and more confident than she had ever been. More importantly, she understood her grandmother's legacy. Elena had not just been a pilot. She had been part of humanity's greatest achievement. "Today is the day," Commander Morrison told the assembled pilots. "Long-range sensors show the hegemony fleet has reached the edge of our solar system. They'll be here in 72 hours. Amy looked around at her fellow pilots. 47 men and women, ranging in age from 19 to 65. They looked calm and ready, but she could see the fear in their eyes. Everyone knew the odds they were facing. "The enemy expects to find a primitive planet with no real defenses," Morrison continued. "They think humans are just another weak species to be wiped out. They have no idea what we've been preparing for the last century." Sarah's hologram appeared next to Amy's seat. Over the weeks of training, the AI had become like a second grandmother to her. "Are you ready for this?" Sarah asked quietly. Amy nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be. Elena did this for 50 years. I can do it for one battle." The pilots launched from the hidden base in waves, their ships invisible to normal radar. Amy followed the flight plan that had been drilled into her memory, staying low over the mountains before climbing toward space. As Earth fell away below her, Amy felt a moment of pure wonder. The planet was beautiful from up here, blue and white and perfect. This was what she was fighting to protect. "All pilots, this is Morrison," the commander's voice came through the radio. "The enemy fleet has been detected entering the outer solar system. They're coming in fast and hard, just like our intelligence predicted." Amy's tactical display lit up with red dots representing enemy ships. There were so many that they looked like a red cloud moving toward Earth. Sarah had been right about the numbers. The hegemony had brought everything they had. "Remember your training," Morrison continued. "We're not trying to match them ship for ship. We're going to hit them where they don't expect it and make them think twice about attacking our home." The battle plan was simple but brilliant. Instead of meeting the alien fleet head-on, the human pilots would strike at supply ships and command vessels while staying hidden in the asteroid belt. They would make the hegemony think Earth's defenses were much stronger than they actually were. Amy's first target was a supply convoy heading toward the main enemy fleet. Sarah guided her through the asteroid field, using the floating rocks as cover. When the alien ships came into range, Amy felt her grandmother's training take over. She dove out of the asteroids like Elena had taught her, striking fast and hard before the enemy could react. Her weapons found their targets with deadly accuracy. 3 alien ships exploded in brilliant flashes before the others even knew they were under attack. "Excellent shooting, Amy," Morrison's voice came through the radio. Elena would be proud. All around the solar system, other human pilots were having similar success. They struck from unexpected angles, used asteroids and space debris as weapons, and disappeared before the enemy could organize a response. The hegemony fleet, expecting an easy victory, found themselves under constant attack from an enemy they could not pin down. Their commanders had planned for a conventional space battle, but humans did not fight conventionally. "Amy, I'm detecting a hegemony command ship breaking away from the main fleet," Sarah reported. "It's heading directly for Earth. If it gets through, it can coordinate a bombardment of the planet." Amy looked at her tactical display. The command ship was massive, easily 10 times the size of her own vessel. It was heavily armed and protected by escort fighters. In a fair fight, she would have no chance. "Then we won't fight fair," Amy said. Remembering her grandmother's lessons, she plotted a course that would take her ship through the densest part of the asteroid field. The command ship followed, its escort fighters struggling to keep up through the floating rocks. Amy led them deeper into the asteroids, flying through gaps that were barely wider than her ship. The larger alien vessels had trouble following, and several escort fighters crashed into the floating rocks. When she reached the center of the asteroid field, Amy put her grandmother's most dangerous tactic into action. She turned her ship around and flew straight at the enemy command vessel, firing all weapons. The alien commander, expecting Amy to break off at the last second, held his course. But Amy did not break off. At the last possible moment, she ejected from her ship and watched it slam into the command vessel at full speed. The explosion was visible from Earth. Sarah's backup systems activated in Amy's emergency pod, guiding her toward a rescue ship. "That was either very brave or very stupid," the AI said. "Elena always said there wasn't much difference," Amy replied. The destruction of the command ship threw the hegemony fleet into confusion. Without central coordination, their attack dissolved into dozens of smaller battles. Human pilots, working in small groups, began picking apart the larger force. Marcus used his ship's tractor beam to throw asteroids at enemy battleships. Lisa led a squadron through the debris of destroyed alien vessels, using the wreckage as cover. Kevin rammed his damaged ship into an enemy fuel depot, causing a chain reaction that destroyed half a dozen alien vessels. Each human pilot fought with the same creative madness that had made Elena Carter a legend. They took impossible risks, used unconventional tactics, and refused to give up even when facing overwhelming odds. The aliens, trained to fight predictable battles against logical enemies, had no answer for human unpredictability. Their superior numbers meant nothing when they could not pin down an enemy that refused to follow the rules. "All pilots, this is Morrison," the commander's voice came through the radio hours later. "The main hegemony fleet is withdrawing." "Repeat." "The enemy is retreating." Amy watched from her rescue ship as the alien fleet pulled back toward the edge of the solar system. They had come expecting an easy victory and instead found themselves fighting an enemy unlike anything they had ever encountered. "How many ships did we lose?" Amy asked. 12 pilots confirmed lost," Morrison replied. 35 ships returning to base. Against a force of over 2,000 enemy vessels, that's not just a victory, that's a miracle. Amy thought about her grandmother and all the pilots who had come before. They had spent a century preparing for this moment, developing the tactics and weapons that had saved Earth from destruction. "Sarah," Amy said, "do you think Elena would be proud?" "I think," the AI replied, "that your grandmother knew exactly what would happen when humans were finally pushed into a corner. She always said that humanity's greatest strength was refusing to accept defeat." As Amy's rescue ship headed back toward Earth, she looked out at the stars where the alien fleet was disappearing. The hegemony had learned a hard lesson about underestimating humans. They had come to destroy a primitive species and instead found warriors who fought like nothing else in the galaxy. Amy Carter had started the week as an archaeologist digging in the desert. She ended it as a space pilot who had helped save her entire planet. Her grandmother's drawings had led her to more than just a buried ship. They had led her to her destiny. The secret war was over, and humanity had won. Not through superior technology or greater numbers, but through the same qualities that had always made humans special. They adapted, they improvised, and they never gave up. Elena Carter's legacy lived on in every human pilot who refused to accept the impossible. The bedtime stories had been real all along, and now Amy was part of the legend.